Welcome to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, produced by the Caribbean Leadership Program under the Caribbean Center for Development Administration, CARICAD, where we provide a number of leadership development interventions tailored for the Caribbean context in support of public sector transformation as well as regional development. In this Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, we will be discussing a range of leadership issues within the public sector context which impact our national and regional development in the Caribbean.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership. Here's your host, Dr. Lloyd Parks.
Today's topic is the role of the head of the public service in the Caribbean context, a role that I'm sure many of our listeners or citizens are not fully aware of, and they're not aware about how it impacts the operations and effectiveness of our public services in the region. Today, we are honored to have as our guest the Honorable Dr. Carlton Davis. Dr. Davis served as head of the public service and cabinet secretary for Jamaica between 1993 until 2008. His first love, however, is actually science, and he joined the public sector in Jamaica as a scientific officer in 1968, and he has served in many capacities in the field of science, bauxite, alumina mining sector. He is a researcher of international renown in the area of bauxite and alumina mining, having published over 60 papers in this area. But we are today focusing on his role as head of the public service. And under his watch as head of the public service in Jamaica, he led a number of transformation initiatives, the most successful being the establishment of a number of executive agency and the executive agency model as a way of delivering much more effective, cost-effective, and efficient public service. Over the past 8 years, he has consulted with the Caribbean Leadership Program in the area of public sector governance. He has received several awards for his contribution to public service, including the Order of Jamaica in 1990. But my favorite accolade for him is that he is my mentor and my friend. And so, Dr. Davis, welcome to this radio series. Thank you for making yourself available to us.
And thank you too for that kind introduction.
Dr. Davis, we want to start off by asking you to share a little bit about your own personal leadership journey. And in particular, how did you manage that transition from being a leader in a very, very science-oriented technical field to coming in as cabinet secretary in 1993, where you're stepping away from the field of science and getting into the belly of public sector leadership and management?
Well, funny enough, it is something I went into rather reluctantly. I was well known and respected in my career in the bauxite sector, and I even had a stint as chairman of the National Housing Trust, the largest housing finance agency in Jamaica, which I was rather enjoying as it was making a difference. When the decision was taken to adopt the developed Commonwealth countries model of the cabinet secretary and head of the public service, I was approached by the late Michael Manley in the last months of his premiership, and I declined, which was not easy for me to do because I knew Michael very well. We were a very good friends. But I just felt that I was quite comfortable in what I was doing and was making a difference. I continued along my line until in 1993, when Mr. Patterson, who succeeded Mr. Manley, asked Dr. Peter Phillips, now leader of the opposition, to broach me again on the matter. And at that point in time, I decided, well, perhaps I could. I was in the bauxite sector at that stage for close to 22 years, and I got them to accept a compromise where I would continue as chairman of the Jamaica Bauxite Institute, which was the principal policy and advisory institution in the bauxite sector, as long as it did not overly impinge on my work as cabinet secretary. That is how I made the transition.
Okay. Now, there is a lack of knowledge or understanding or even awareness about this role of the head of the public service in the region and the importance of that role. Define for us, what is the role of the head of the public service and why it is necessary?
First of all, most constitutions in the Commonwealth Caribbean are defined in the most general of terms. General of terms. The minister has general direction and control over a particular department or ministry, and subject to such general direction and control, the permanent secretary or so on for any. The cabinet secretary, the traditional role, and some Commonwealth countries state practice the traditional role, prepare the agenda in association with the head of government, the prime minister, ensure that appropriate minutes are made or of the transaction or the decisions, they transmit those minutes and you start the cycle again. Now, I would not have left what I was doing to do that only. So I had to acquaint myself with the best practices across the United Kingdom, which was the founder of the system and the one who introduced the cabinet secretary as the head of the civil service under Mr. Thatcher's regime in 1981. Canada, with which I was familiar, having done my undergraduate studies there, and in later years kept close to the country through class reunion and my frequent visits to Alcan's headquarters in Montreal. And other countries like Australia and New Zealand, the latter which you know very well, which were making very significant reform efforts in the organization of their public service away from the classical direction. So I had to familiarize myself with that. And very importantly, have the support, the absolute support of the political head of government in what we were about.
Yes.
Without that, even somebody with my stature, and in fact, the Prime Minister stated in the book that one of the things which commended me to the job was my experience and stature, so to speak. And so even with my stature, it was most important to have the support of the head of the government.
Dr. Davis, we'll continue the discussion after we take this short break.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Across Caribbean public services, there is great demand for transformational leadership to create an environment that fosters innovation in public service delivery. But how do you know if your organization has this enabling environment? Grounded in research, the Caribbean Leadership Project has developed an enabling environment assessment. This provides a wide range of strategies and actions to help take public sector organizations and regional institutions to a higher level in enabling transformational leaders. To find out how you can use this assessment to foster and inspire purpose-driven leadership, to build leadership capacity for action, encourage collaboration, and support the achievement of results, visit us at www.clptoolkit.org and contact us at info@caribbeanleadership.org. Let us help your organization learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
We have with us the Honorable Dr. Carlton Davis, retired Cabinet Secretary and Head of the Public Service from the Public Service in Jamaica. And we are discussing the topic of the role of the Head of the Public Service. Before the break, Dr. Davis, you were sharing with us how you began to define the Head of the Public Service through your research in other jurisdictions. If you could, in a nutshell, describe so that the ordinary person on the street across the Caribbean listening to you can understand what is the role of the head of the public service and why is that role even important?
The public service is a fundamental requirement of the whole governance process, written into the Constitution through the responsibilities defined in the most general of terms, but elaborated in laws, subsidiary laws, and other directives of the role of permanent secretaries, technical officers, and so on, in supporting the political government in carrying out the work of the country. So you have to ensure that the public service is coordinated and well able to respond to this role. Now, I did this largely through a permanent secretary's board, which I chaired, and which met regularly to ensure coordination of the work that we are doing, supporting each other in circumstances which may result in difficulties with the political directorate, and ensuring that permanent secretaries and other people in leadership positions are appropriately trained to carry out their roles in a better way, to represent the public service to the public through, participation in panel discussions. I myself like to write because I believe that it sharpens your own capacity to understand things and put them in a logical way. But it also educates and informs people, and in turn, generally speaking, get the support of media and the general public. So that, in a nutshell, is how I saw the role as head of the public service.
Okay. Now, what do you see as the major challenges facing anybody today, assuming the role of head of the public service in any of our Caribbean countries or CARICOM member states? And not just the challenges you see such a person facing today, but in the foreseeable future.
And certainly in the case of Jamaica, and from what I know of most Caribbean countries, unlike, say, Canada, which has instituted this in legislation, the head does not have any sort of statutory superiority position in leadership terms over the others. So you have to exercise the authority in a moral way with the support of the head of government. You see the point? It's not like, say, you are the chief personnel officer and you have a deputy chief personnel officer, right? There's no question who reports to whom because it's rigged, okay? Whereas in the case of our organization, the public service, remember, we've never really contemplated the process until more recent times. And in a sense, it was essentially honorific. You get a prominent seat in some public ceremonies and funerals, these sorts of things, but not in an authoritative sense. But you can only do so with the support of your political directorate in the form of the Prime Minister. And once everybody understands that the Prime Minister, for example, in Barbados, and I can only speak for Oinato's time because many of the things he was doing, which he borrowed from us, is that he gave the late Mrs. Gollop full support in her role. And in my own case, I had Mr. Patterson and then Mrs. Simpson Miller and briefly Mr. Golding's support in carrying out this role. So that's important.
Yes.
And generally speaking, public servants are, they will fall in line. And importantly, make the body, like the Permanent Secretary's Board, effective so that they are a part of something that is important and they see it necessary to attend meetings punctually and to participate fully. So that's how I operated, and then establish the credibility of the position through articulation in the public arena, writing speeches, that sort of thing. You have to make it, you have to make it. Whereas in the Canadian system, for example, in the public sector law, it is asserted in one section, I can't remember the name of the law, that the clerk of the Privy Council come cabinet secretary is the head of the public service. In Britain, they do a lot of things by convention, stemming from their own lack of a constitution written on one piece of paper like ours. So that's how I operated in carrying out the role. But the permanent secretary's board was a key. And we even had, although it was operated at a different level, heads of department forming their own bodies of support and coordination of what they were doing.
Okay.
Separate and apart from the permanent secretary's board.
We will be back after a short break. When we return, I want to follow up on that and have you talk a little bit more about how you yourself shaped and crafted this role of the head of the public service, given the lack of formal authority for that role.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
Does your organization have leaders with the self-awareness and confidence to lead effectively? Can they develop high-performing teams? Can they work effectively with multiple stakeholders? And are they equipped to navigate change and complexity? For these and other leadership challenges, the Caribbean Leadership Program offers a suite of virtual, face-to-face and customized interventions to meet your needs. Our 5-day workshop on leading change and transition will provide senior executives with the mindset shift and tools to successfully lead change initiatives. Our transformational leadership development program is ideal for preparing high-potential leaders for succession to executive roles. And our mid-level leadership development program is perfect for those leading from the middle. For details on these and other offerings, visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Join us to learn, network, succeed.
The Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, where Caribbean leaders discuss Caribbean leadership.
We are back with the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series, and we have with us Dr. Carlton Davis, and we are discussing the topic of the role of the head of the public service. Now, before the last break, we were discussing, Dr. Davis, some of the challenges with the fact that the role of the head of the public service in the Caribbean context is by and large without formal authority. And you started to talk a bit about how you yourself decided to fulfill that role while you were the occupant. So can you share a little bit more, given that context, how did you shape and craft that role for yourself?
Well, as I said before, I had the support of the Prime Minister. And generally speaking, I had the respect of the opposition leadership, based on my experience and my career prior to taking up the role. And that was important.
Yes, so it's important. Whoever has that role has to have that credibility.
Right, credibility. Also, I established quite good relations with the media. Not that they weren't critical, but I did. And always enjoyed respect from that source, and that was important, okay? Because they, after all, are the people who communicate through radio, television, or the written media what's going on.
Yes.
Okay? Also, I was willing to speak at seminars and things like that, which I used the opportunity to articulate the vision, and these were widely carried. Also, I tried to make the board, as I was intimating earlier, effective so that people felt they were part of a venture and supportive of that venture. And I suppose in everything, personality counts, you know.
Yes.
People have different styles and so on, but that is how I did it, and it turned out to have worked out quite well. On top of that, I would support permanent secretaries who might have issues with their respective ministers. Maybe it involved decisions over powerful staff in statutory boards who may, in their view, not performing the functions effectively.
Yes.
And they can't manage it, so I would intervene with the Prime Minister and the Minister.
Okay.
So they had that sort of support. So overall, I think I had generally good acceptance within the public service. I formed good relationship. It was Mr. Eddie Bailey for a long time.
Yes, he was the president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association.
Right. And then the gentleman who succeeded him, Wayne Jones.
Yes.
I had very good relationship with them, and so they became a part of the support structure.
Yes. Okay.
So those were the elements that I put together.
Now, anybody who is going to be assuming the role of head of the public service, how should they prepare for it? And if you have any other recommendations generally at the policy level on changes that might be needed to make that role more effective?
Well, first of all, I would say you have to ensure when you take up the job that the Prime Minister is behind you. Now, as I think we discussed briefly, maybe off the record before, it doesn't mean you're going to be in full agreement all along, but that he or she is behind you in the role, and everybody should know that. Second, to the extent that you can, and I know it's not easy in small island territories, you should have the support generally across the political spectrum. Not again, I know it's not very easy, but at least respect that you're a person of competence, doing a job fairly and professionally.
Yes.
I think that is very important. And the last but not least, you have to perform so that you are making a difference.
Do you think we need any changes at the policy level? The fact that we don't have, for example, formal authority granted to the head of the public service?
I think that we need to look at that. You see, and to look at the Canadians. The Canadians rather than even the country, very well, New Zealand, because they don't have the British and the New Zealand don't have written constitution.
Yes.
So they depend a lot on convention. Things are done like that, I don't even think they have anywhere that our Prime Minister is appointed, I don't think so.
Yes.
So I think that we should look at where the Canadians have legislation which asserts that, and therefore once that is law, it becomes something that you will help. But that is not enough. It is really to ensure some sort of performance that people will respect. But I think it would be important that there is a commitment by the government and by the opposition leadership that it is an important element in making the system operate, whoever forms the government, and therefore forgetting policies with which people may have difference, the role is recognized. And if they can move the legislative framework to incorporate it in law, I think that would help.
Dr. Davis, we really want to thank you so much. I think as I reflect on all the various points you've made, some of the key takeaways, head of the public service has to have professional integrity, has to have that reputation that is built up over time, has to have the confidence and the backing of the Prime Minister as well as the opposition. The person must be a team builder in terms of bringing the Permanent Secretaries Committee or Board together, getting them to buy into a vision, and of course, building relationships with the press, with the media, and with a number of stakeholders. So we thank you once again, Dr. Davis, for sharing so generously with us. You've been listening to the Caribbean Leadership Radio Series. Please check with this station for other episodes in our series. To learn more about the Caribbean Leadership Program, please visit our website at www.caribbeanleadership.org. Thanks for joining us.